Welcome to Powerful Women Today Live. It is Money Wednesday, and we are going to be talking about women and entrepreneurship. There's a lot of noise being made about leaving corporate, not turning back, but there's a lot of things to consider before you start a business. We are thrilled to welcome today Rosanna Lamanna, one of our mentor experts, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Let's get to it.
Empowering women on a global scale. Welcome to Powerful Women Today with Carolina Billings. Powerful Women Today is on a mission of inclusion, rewriting his story to include her story, and empowering, raising, and amplifying women's voices with professional speaking, publishing, original podcasting, and web TV. And now here's your host, the founder of Powerful Women Today, Carolina Billings.
Rosanna, welcome. As always, a pleasure to speak with you. How is everything going in accounting world?
Great. Thank you, Carolina. Everything's going well, actually. Lots going on, lots of activity. I'm finding a lot of questions these days about, new businesses, not only here in Canada, but also new businesses entering Canada and wanting to operate in the Canadian marketplace. So lots of activity around new business startups.
That is great. We're definitely in a shift. Both from a pandemic induced recalibrating of what does it mean to be an employee, what does it mean to be part of the gig economy, and everything is great. There's no one thing that is good or 100% good or 100% bad. There's good and bad to both. And there was an article recently in the Globe and Mail which I thought was really interesting as it related to women career and entrepreneurship as a result of a lot of the changes that are happening with the pandemic. And the article in the Globe and Mail said that it posed the question: is the current hybrid model of people working virtual and maybe sometimes in person going to set women's careers back, right? Because they are now not, out of sight, out of mind, right?
Okay.
Especially women that have young children. So what we're going to start, what the article presented was that women as oftentimes primary caregivers, whether it's a single income or of a double income household, tend to take care of children first, right? So if given the choice to go back to work or continue working remotely, the article thinks that a lot of women are going to opt to work remotely. And as men begin to come back into the office, right, it is going to create or go back to that old boys club that we worked so hard at breaking through and providing better gender intelligence by making sure that there's women representation, there's proper representation of everyone in leadership. So you work for a large organization that it seems to be the largest organizations that are able to provide that hybrid model. The rest of the companies are either coping or going full back, but let's talk about the career and executive and all of that. All women are becoming a little bit of disillusioned with having to deal with everything, with having to deal with children at home, with the career at work, and they may be buying into all this messaging about the glory of entrepreneurship and seeing the pictures of someone in a hammock with laptop on their lap just working in the sea breeze, right? And every time I see one of those, I laugh because it could not be further from reality, at least for a good several years. So, we're going to discuss today some things in your experience and in what you see and in about all of these. What are the things, everybody talks about getting ready to start a business, but there's a thing called getting ready to get ready. Things you have to consider before that even enters your radar.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about hybrid work models and what those look like, and sort of they fall on different. I guess they kind of fall on a spectrum. There's sort of the fully remote, and then there's the fully back in the office, and then there's kind of everything in between, and finding ways to make it work. Some companies are looking at mandating maybe a couple of days a week in the office. Others are more flexible. So there's a lot of different models out there, but you know, there is something to be said about being in the office at times. And I think it also depends on sort of your line of business and what you do, but collaborating with your colleagues, bouncing ideas. I know the one thing that I miss about not being in the office is sometimes just what we call sort of that water cooler talk and just bumping into somebody. And, that, conversation that might start with, how was your weekend, could turn into something much bigger and new opportunities. And, oh, you know what, maybe we can do this together. And, some of that, I'm going to say the spontaneity that comes
Camaraderie.
out, yeah,
Yeah.
and camaraderie with your colleagues and being able to sort of team up and do things and, sort of your own story in terms of your own successes in either serving your clients or doing something fruitful internally that makes a big difference and having that impact versus sometimes being at home, you're kind of dealing with, maybe the back-to-back video calls and trying to juggle other things, as you said, with working moms and having children at home. It could be a struggle.
And
I'm a
it's
work.
tempting to begin to multitask. Sorry,
Yeah, no,
it's tempting to begin to become Wonder Woman, where you're now thinking, oh, you know what, I can get dinner started at like beginning to really take on those tasks that were perhaps reserved for the weekend and hopefully shared with a life partner, where
mhm.
now you're home in your home handling, like you said, back-to-back calls, whether they're video or not. The reality is that, you know what, you were in back-to-back meetings, in person or remote. So whether they're video calls or not, still back-to-back meetings, right? So you're in back-to-back meetings. You now have children in the background. There's pets barking, growling, doing whatever. There's, people at the door. There's just, I find the pressure that it has put on women, it is exorbitant. I'm not saying that it's 100% on women, but I am saying that the majority is on women. And in so there's the lure of, you know what, I don't, especially if you get recalled back full time and maybe your children's schooling hasn't been sorted out, right? Because we're, and not just in Canada but all over the world, we're in this touch and go. What do we believe? What do we know? What does science prove today? Right? It's just, so you may be hesitant to go back full time, not having an issue resolved at home. And so you may be buying into these, you know what, I'm just going to start my own business.
Yeah, and I think
And
that's go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with women having these types of thoughts about starting their own business. I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy, thinking about I can't do this or how am I going to find the time, and sometimes it just seems easier to work for someone else versus for yourself. When truth be told, you're going to be working hard in either case. So make sure you find your passion and what gets you up and what gets you going every day, knowing that every day is going to be a juggling act, no matter if you work for someone else or for yourself. There's a lot of similarities. It's just follow your heart, follow your passion, but be ready for it.
Absolutely. And they say there's no, when there's two thoughts that come to mind. There's the saying, when is the best time to plant a tree, which is now. And in when is the right time to start a business. And I have to tell you, there's no such thing as a right time. It's
No,
like the right time to have children or the right time to, you know, it's whenever you find, as you said, the courage to get started, right?
yeah.
But being of a financial background, and you and I, we practice magical realism, where we are visionaries, but we're also, that accounting DNA, right? Like there's a realism that goes with it. There is such a thing as the wrong time to start a business.
Yeah,
right? And
yeah, I would say there is. I mean, I get, going back again to the sort of financial pieces is, do you have the capital to start a business? It's not easy depending on what you're looking, like what business you're looking to get into. You might have to actually have some upfront cash that you'll have to sort of make sure is available before you can get started.
especially for women that are one income household that have young children, if you have a job that gives you that regular steady amount of money to meet your regular steady financial commitments, quitting your job to start a business is not something that we would recommend. And I'm saying recommend. I'm not okay. So what am I saying? I'm saying it's not what we're recommending is that you plan a strategy that you keep your day job, begin your business in the evening. And if you think those are crazy hours to maintain, guess what? When you have your business, those are the hours that you're going to work. So that gives you a little bit of a taste of what does it take to start a business, right? What kind of personality do you like selling? Because if you don't like selling, if you don't like being in front of people, if you don't like to hustle, if you don't like to, do that proverbial foot on the door and try to like, get your footing in, that is fundamental, right? That is you have to sell. There's no such thing as order taking, right?
Right?
And our first advice would be for you to start your own business at night and get your footing in, see what it feels like. And it's only when that business begins to generate and has proof of concept, and there's a market and a need, and you know how to match the two, that you begin to let go of your day job, or maybe work, switch it to part-time, or begin to transition where your primary income is coming from. And we're talking about people who have very specific fixed financial expenses that cannot withstand the up and down of business ownership, because it is a roller coaster.
Yeah, especially in the early years. I'm going to just use the example of consulting. You don't know when you're going to get your next gig, right?
Mhm.
So you can have a project today, it could be last a month, but you may not have one after that. So you need to be prepared, both financially and being able to spend the time or invest the time to find your next, client.
That's right. And your cash management, again, right? It may be that you get paid for that contract all at once up front, and that money's got to last you 2, 3 or the length, however long you're working, right? So
Mhm.
be able to, it's a complete shift in lifestyle. It's a complete shift going from working from someone else to working for yourself. Remember, you're the boss now, right? Are you happy working for yourself? Right? Are you happy with the boss version of you, right? Is she living up to her expectations? Is she doing sales? Is she doing, good quality control? Is she understanding that sometimes you got to let customers go because, at some point it's just you got to measure the cost and reward, right? and
Yeah.
and again, how are you going to supplement that income? So it's completely different. And we're not please, we are powerful women today. We champion women's emotional and financial independence. And I have to tell you, owning your own business, you don't have to put up with glass ceilings. You don't have to put up with many things that are endemic of the corporate world. But for women, especially being primary caregivers, there's more thought that needs to be given in working with mentors such as Rosanna, or such as many of the coaches within Powerful Women today, to help guide us to, okay, how do we know this is going to work? How do we know is the right thing for me? Especially for lifestyle. You always consider, you may dream of starting your own business. I know many ladies that are fabulous at creating these like incredible soups, like the best mason jar soups on earth, right? And their dream is to be picked up at a major food company like Whole Foods or Costco or something like that, right? And you're thinking, okay, yeah, I get it. That would be the dream, right? But how are you going to manage to produce, the fulfillment of these contracts, right? And what will that do for your lifestyle? And if you're doing all of this to spend more time with your kids, let me tell you, you could, your business becomes your baby, or it becomes your partner. You know what I mean? And it is that kind of commitment that is required for it to succeed. And sometimes it borderlines on obsession, and is doing that, that 1 or 2% extra above and beyond, giving it all, that the 1 and 2% that achieves that goal gets to do and give. So knowing how much cash reserves, what would be a guideline that you suggest?
I think it really depends on the nature of what you're doing. Like, what are some of your fixed overhead costs versus maybe some of the variable costs that come with your sales? So I think you kind of have to look at those too. I'm going to say, like, the best thing to do is really plan. And I always say it's always good to talk to somebody about it. I know sometimes we think that we can just sort of talk to ourselves, figure it out, write it on a piece of paper. But there's so much to be learned when you are speaking to someone. I'm going to go back to, I know you and I are very big on sort of the coaching pieces, and sometimes just bouncing ideas off someone or having the time and space to think out loud and for people to sort of ask you some questions about it could totally change what you thought was a good idea into something that was, I really need to put a little more thought into this before I jump in feet first. Because, when you're starting your own business, you're giving up a lot,
Oh,
right? Not only
you're
time,
gaining a lot,
you're
but
gaining
you're
a lot, but you're
giving up a
giving up a
lot.
lot as well, right? Like, there's lots to be gained with the business. It's just you need the patience to, and the perseverance to get through some of the earlier years, but you are also still giving up a lot. And you want to make sure that you think it through, and you're not, especially if you are cash strapped or relying on friends and family and their money, you don't want to burn it away. You want to make sure that you're using it in the right places, and that you're, I'm going to say, getting a return on your investment and not just sort of throwing it away. At the end of the day, do we make mistakes? And sometimes that happens. Absolutely. But I'm going to say a well thought out plan can help you get on the right track a lot quicker.
That's right. And you know what? Working in feedback, along with learning to sell and learning how to get feedback, are fundamental. Like you said, meeting with a coach, and I much, and this is my own personal bias, whatever professional I interact with, I do look for them to have coaching skills, because prescriptive type of advisory is long gone, because what works for one person may not work for the other one, right? And to be an entrepreneur, there's such a need for an internal locus of drive, an internal locus of control, right? That if all your information and all your drive and all your accountability and all your everything's coming from someone else, right, just being directed, is going to be an easier, it may seem easier, but it's going to be harder in the long haul. You want to work with professionals who are coaches, who are helping, teaching you to fish, right? Back to the giving you a fish or teaching you to fish, right? And with it comes being asked a lot of questions, and at times it's very easy to get defensive. It's very easy to, get protective. It's like, who are you to ask me this? Like, I know better, right? Well, it's either you have two choices in life. It's either you're right or you're growing and learning, right? So, and know that there's no one person that knows it all. So I don't care, we meet women from, from 100% entrepreneurship to PhDs, right? And I'm always amazed whenever I meet someone that they don't think they have anything to learn. And it's always like, okay, well, that taught me a lot. The fact that you have nothing to learn. So, anyways, in lastly, and which goes to starting your own business, right? There's a lot that you don't know about what goes on in a business, right? Especially if you work within a team. You may be a genius at what you do, but you don't know what everybody's input is in order to have a finished product, in order to have a happy customer, right? So
Mhm.
you may not understand the skills needed or the work needed to work every facet of the business. So which takes us to what is the right business model for you? There's a lot of romance in thinking that you're starting something from scratch and you're designing that logo and that website and that something from nothing, right? But that takes time and that burns cash, and it
Mhm.
requires a certain personality to come up with a differentiator enough to create a product that will compete in the marketplace with a proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
And that's not always necessary. Sometimes it's easier just to buy a license or buy a franchise and be in business today with somebody else has done the research and development for you.
Yeah, exactly. And looking at the franchise model, I mean, the brand is there. A lot of the training, the education piece, the support is all in place. I think that's one of the big realities of running your own business. Maybe if you worked for someone else, you were kind of one piece of the puzzle or the bigger puzzle of the organization. Now you are all the pieces of the organization, in its truest sense. You may not have employees and you may not have anyone to delegate certain things to. You may not have anybody else to talk to, when you want to bounce an idea off of someone. So, it's thinking through, what is it that you're looking to sell? And then finding out what's the most strategic way to go about that. How are you going to generate revenues? And, when I think of revenue, it's not maybe just that one-time revenue, but you should be thinking about
Recurring.
recurring revenues, right? Yeah. So
We
how
can
do
all be great ones.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's
We
that
need to keep going.
continuous going that is the challenge at
Yeah,
hand.
exactly. So there's lots of different business models out there, and finding the right one for you and your business is going to be super important. That's why I go back to my earlier comment of making sure you've got a plan and a strategy and think through what is it that you're going to sell? How are you going to go about selling it? Where are your target clients? Making sure that you can reach them, and really connecting with your audience, in terms of your customers and who they are. So, there's different ways out there. You hear of subscription-based revenues, you hear of hourly rates for, consultants, or fixed prices, or, fixed fee for a particular cost reduction that you save a particular customer. There's different models out there, but again, it comes down to what is your business, what are you selling, and looking at it from, I'm going to say, a longer term lens in terms of how you can generate some revenues not only today, but continue to generate them for the foreseeable
Yeah.
future.
And with licensing and franchising, a lot of people get a bit of sticker shock, right? They don't have the 5, 10, 20, 30, $100,000 to buy that business.
Mhm.
And they're thinking, that's a lot of risk, right? But sometimes doing what you're buying is somebody's pain and suffering that started it from scratch, right? So you're buying that security that somebody already figured out that this makes money, how it's going to make money, where the market is, where the advertising, where the product, everything. So you're walking into something that there's already proof that you have a great likelihood of success, right? Because the money, you're going to spend it, whether it's at the front or death by a thousand cuts, right? Is you may end up spending way more than that in developing something from scratch that may or may not have proof of concept, or you may or may not have the personality for it or the stomach for it, for that matter, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, you go, in the entrepreneurship world, and you can relate to it because certain professions have historically always operated like an entrepreneur, such as, partners in consulting firms or real estate agents, insurance agents, that you do get to work for a company, but you're responsible for a portfolio. So you have to have that entrepreneurship in you, right? But going out on your own, and in, like you said, being isolated, having someone to talk to, or even compare, right? If you're owning a license or a franchise, it depends what you're desiring also to manifest in your life, to fulfill in your life. If it is the creative process, then absolutely start from scratch, right? Just make sure everything's lined up by working with someone like Rosanna or a money coach. Or, and by the way, when choosing a money coach, please work with accountants, work with financial planners, right? Is, anybody that's telling you can have a six-figure business, better have a six-figure business. If they're telling you, you know, I can get you 1,000, LinkedIn connections a day, and you check their profile, there better have, you know, tens of thousands of LinkedIn connections. So the proof is in the person coaching you, selling you, or training you, right? And that's something to consider, because there's lots that they're transferring the knowledge to you. And if they're not successful, then how are you going to be successful at it? Right?
Yeah.
There's truth in that. So definitely work with somebody who is reputable, especially when it comes to money, especially when it comes to plans. And I know it's easier to just have it handed to you or work on that business plan, right? Like everybody somebody taught me a 3-word business plan, or a 3-sentence or 2-sentence business plan. How do you find your clients, and how do you make money off them? Don't worry about the endless spreadsheets. And, yes, that comes, you do need some kind of direction. But if you're going to burn all your initial investment on websites, on business plans, on abstract, and not on a sales and business strategy, on how you're going to monetize from day one, or what your sales funnels are, you need to contact Rosanna.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You've been with me since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen what we've been going through, and we've seen the taking, one step back to move to forward, right? And the truth of an entrepreneur is that you go from hero to zero in 20 minutes, many times a day.
Yeah.
And you need to have the stomach for that.
For sure, for sure. It is a bit of a roller coaster ride for all entrepreneurs when they embark on new ventures. But there is, I think, a bit of a stigma. Like, people tend to think a business plan is like this, 1,000-page, booklet that needs to be created before you can even start your business. When really, at the end of the day, it shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be something that you do and file away. It's got to be like a live document that you constantly revisit. And there's always trial and error when you're starting a new business. So you're going to have to be agile and be able to pivot and recognize that, things don't always go as planned, and that's okay. And everybody goes through it. It's part of the learning process. And through that, it just makes you stronger, not only as an individual, but even for your company, right?
And remember, what you measure, you manage. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to let you close our show. As always, so informative. And, I was just speaking to Rosanna before the show that we're ready to level up. And the first call that I'm making is to her.
Thank you, Carolina.
No problem. It makes all the difference when you're working with someone who's coaching you and guiding you, as opposed to someone telling you how to do things. So,
And those are words of wisdom. I think we should probably end on that,
absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we look forward to seeing you guys next month on our Getting Ready To. We spoke today, we touched on it today about, using your friends and family's money to start a business. So next month, we're talking about, where is that seed capital going to come from? Right? So we look forward to seeing you then. Stay safe and stay strong. Bye.
Bye.
Empowering women on a global scale. This has been Powerful Women Today with Carolina Billings. To learn more about how you can join and transform your life and the lives of women everywhere with professional speaking, publishing, podcasting, and web TV, visit powerfulwomentoday.com. Remember to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen and watch your podcasts.